And we're back. Back in Crusader Kings III, that is. Now, if you've never heard of this game, it sure is something. And by something, I mean it's a world full of crusades, kings, and so many other things. If you can dream it, you can do it. Except replace humanity with horses. Well, not yet at least. In my last playthrough, I was able to genocide the French people, and then I replaced them with Canadians. But today, there will be no genocide, unfortunately. This is not a story of death or vengeance. It's a story of revival. It's a story of Rome's return. It all starts a long time ago, and not very far away. 867 is a great time, full of death, and that's about it. But at least there's God, right? No, just a church that has the entire GDP of a small nation. If there's one thing this world needs, it's a savior. And that is not our guy. Saving the world is not today's problem. Today's problem is something way more important. I mean, who would want to do something good when you could just get rich and powerful? To be as rich and powerful as we want to be today, we will need nothing short of a miracle. So why not start by making one? On the small island of Sardinia, a stirring arises. People say there is a newborn boy, a boy who is no ordinary man, a genius with unnatural strength, and the looks to back it up. Why they found an infant attractive? Well, that's not... Anyway, the boy is something else. Some even say he's a god, but he isn't a god. He's only Julius Caesar. Who his parents were, no one knows. Could this be the second coming of Christ? No, not even close. I mean, the very first day of his life, young Julius declared his bloodline to be superior than any other and named himself the Bloodfather. And if you need any more proof, on the second day of his life, he declared war. And once that war was over, he did it again, and again, and again. There has never been a more bloodthirsty child. This kid is literally conquering land at the same age I was wearing diapers. And by the age of 7, he swore fealty to the Byzantine Empire. And then he went back to declaring wars. At the age of 10, he wanted some of that, okay, you do you, pal. Whatever you want. He then proceeded to threaten his one and only friend. Not a very good idea when everyone hates you because you are the single person who worships the old gods. At 12 years old, Julius had conquered the majority of southern Italy, learned a second language, and was the Duke of Sardinia. So what's your excuse? When Julius came of age, he had become a cowardly little loser who worked hard and loved meeting new people. Not a very common combination of traits, but I guess nothing is impossible. Seeing all the wars that he had declared in the first 16 years of his life, it's not surprising that he was educated in warfare. Eventually, though, Julius grew tired of waging wars for one single county. War after war, and so little gained. His ambition led him down a path of betrayal. Betrayal against the Byzantine emperor. Julius began fabricating his own claim on the throne of the Byzantine Empire. One day he would rule it all. But he was in no rush to use this claim and put himself on the throne instantly. He knew that if he did, it would only end in rebellion, so he would have to wait. If he was to one day be the emperor of Byzantium, he would need to make friends with his vassals-to-be. And he did just that. He invited them to feasts, competed in their tournaments, and used his special ways to gain their favor. On the 29th of June, 890, Julius' scheme to claim the Byzantine throne was complete. He was now one giant step closer to achieving his goals. As he waited for the right time to come, he saw that Italy was going through its own civil war. If this war were to be won by the vassals, the realm would split into many smaller nations. This would be Julius' chance to gain more Italian land. He was able to gain part of the Duchy of Genoa and the entire Duchy of Romagna. As the years passed, Julius built a family, and on June 9th, 903, Julius's first son, Octavian, was born. Octavian would be groomed to be the great successor to his father's legacy. It would be a shame if anything were to happen to him. With the new alliances he formed by marrying off his children to foreign kids who he had never even met, Julius had a strong military presence. He turned this great army on one of his neighboring rulers, on this guy. The Duchy of Croatia was another one of the duchies that he needed to complete his goals and restore the Roman Empire. After a couple years of basically doing nothing, it was time to claim Byzantium. On the 11th of October, 914, the Great War began. After 5 long years of war, Julius was now 52 years old. He was over halfway through his life, and yet there was still so much more work to be done. To stop his new throne from instantly being taken, Julius demanded all of his vassals to convert to Hellenism. This way they wouldn't hate his guts and maybe wouldn't join a faction to remove his power. But even though he gave it his best effort, he wasn't able to stop an uprising. His vassals came at him with a military that was 6 times the size of Julius's. I mean, that's a lot of people, seeing as that Julius had 6,000 men, and that's more than you should ever need. It's like way above average. There was no backing down. Julius would not let them take what he had worked so hard for. They came at him with demands of independence, but they would have it in death. Even as Julius was fighting the biggest war of his life, he was still working in the shadows. To restore the Roman Empire, he would need land that was under the control of the Abbasid Empire, which was way bigger than anyone had ever seen. So as he fought valiantly with his ungrateful vassals, he also worked to murder Caliph Zahir. Even though the odds were stacked against him and there was only a 30% chance to kill the Caliph, Julius did not back down. He went through with the plan, and by some miracle, it worked. The Abbasid Empire was now under the control of a boy. There was no way he would be able to fight the dissolution war that was passed down from his father. The Abbasid Empire would not last for much longer. Back in Byzantium, the mutiny was thousands stronger than Julius's own army. Yet he was still somehow able to squeeze out a white peace, preventing a tragedy that would have unwound all the work that he had spent the entirety of his life building. This gave him vital time to work out all the kinks in his empire and ensure that this would never happen again. The 17th of January, 925, a day that changed Julius's life forever. After years of teaching his son to be the best man that he could be, Octavian had become the perfect son. He was a genius and would ensure that his father's legacy would live on forever. If there was one man that could change the world, it was Octavian. But on that fateful day, fate cut his strings short. Octavian was murdered by an unknown assailant. He was stabbed to death, most likely by someone close to him. Ironic, Julius Caesar lives on, but his son Octavian is stabbed by a friend. Yet, the Abbasid Empire was no more, and what was left of its remnants was nothing in comparison. It was now time for Julius to reclaim Alexandria. Fueled by the lasting rage of his son's murder, he sent his army across the Mediterranean and landed in the deserts of northern Egypt. By some miracle, Julius was able to win the war without fighting a single battle. And with Alexandria now back in Roman hands, Julius was one step closer to restoring the Roman Empire. Julius had now been alive for over 60 years. and yet there was still so much that he had to do. He felt that his life was nearing an end as he became infirm, but he wouldn't give up so easily. It was time to reclaim the seat of the Roman Empire. Pope Victor II was the next target on the list, and he wouldn't be on that list much longer. Julius took 9,000 men and marched into Latium. The Pope's coffers didn't seem so endless now. He quickly ran out of money to hire his mercenaries, and his army fell swiftly to the Byzantines. It only took 16 months for Rome to fall. Julius was more powerful than he had ever been, and with that power, he went to war with Italy and Venice simultaneously. However, the timing couldn't be worse. Whether out of spite or some other reason, Pope Victor II declared a crusade for Romagna. Julius was powerful, but he was not powerful enough to fight the entirety of the Catholic Church. He finished his wars with Italy and Venice and moved on to try and defend Romagna, but there was nothing that could be done to stop the church. He gave up on defending against the Catholics and returned to fight his revolting vassals. Even though the crusade was only for Romagna, the Catholics reclaimed the seat of the papacy, and Rome was lost again. Julius had lived much longer than he should have. He was now 77 years old, and there was still so much more he had to conquer. As he waited for the aging pope to die, he cleaned up the land that he still needed in southern Italy. There were still 3 territories that were needed in the Middle East and northern Africa, but before those could be reclaimed, Julius decided it was time to bring a new culture to the world. He merged his Roman culture with the Greek culture and created Novus Romanus, a new culture that would unite his Roman traditions with the Greek traditions of his vassals. With this new culture, Julius was able to fuel his conquest of Armenia and Palestine. There now only remained the Pope's land and one other territory in the north of Africa. Before he would bring his fury to Africa, he decided it was time to reform the Hellenistic faith. New Hellenism would be the one true faith. All 3 tenets were replaced with mendicant preachers, communion, and warmonger. Mendicant preachers and warmonger would allow New Hellenism to spread quickly, and communion would allow money to flow into the church. Lay clergy was established, and a temporal head of faith was created. This meant that all the money from communion would go straight to Julius. This was the dawn of a new age for the world. This new faith would allow Julius to reclaim the land that was once taken by the Pope in one single war. But before that could be done, he had to conquer the last territory in northern Africa. So Julius declared his wars and sent his army straight to Tunis. After a brutal slaughter of the Tunisian army, Julius had reclaimed all the land outside of the papacy. It was now time for one last war. At 87 years of age, Julius declared war on the Pope. Rome will return. After 15 months of war, Rome was defeated once again. It was now time to restore the long-lost Roman Empire, or so Julius thought. There was one county that he had missed, the county of Spoleto. In a panicked rush, Julius declared one last war for this county. He was now 89 years old and at death's doorstep. He knew that he would be dead within the year. There was no time to waste. Either he would finish this war in less than a year, or he would die before he could restore the Roman Empire. In a frenzy, Julius marched his troops across the land, making sure that there was no time wasted. He would not fail. On the 13th of November, 956, the war was over. The time had come. All of the land was now in Julius's control, and he was a living legend. After nearly 90 years of life, the sun rose and Julius was in the dawn of a new era. The last months of his life were spent overseeing the marriage of his grandson Julius and his granddaughter Titanina while admiring his new empire. And on May the 11th of 957, 90 years after he was born, Julius Caesar was no more.